DNP3 Basics, Lesson 11, Unsolicited Data. The prior sections dealt with reporting static data and event data to the master. The way discussed was for the master to request the data and the outstation to respond. There is another way to get event data to the master, and that is for the outstation to decide to send event data by itself. The term for this is unsolicited data. Unsolicited data can be used for sending event data. It cannot be used for sending static data. But prior to 1997, it was allowed to send static data in an unsolicited message. So some very old outstations may do this. For this class, we are going to assume that this behavior does not exist. First, we must be aware that not all outstations are capable of sending unsolicited data. And some companies may adopt a policy to disable this capability even for outstations that can support it. But as it does not make sense to talk about unsolicited data reporting for an outstation that does not support this feature, let's assume it does. As we will see, there is really not much difference between sending event data to the master with a normal solicited request-response sequence or via unsolicited reporting. In a typical solicited polling sequence, a master sends a request for class 1, 2, and 3 data. The outstation responds with whatever events it may have. If none exist, it sends a null response. A null response contains an application header and internal indications, but no object header or data. When the master gets a message with events, it processes the events and sends an application confirm to the outstation. Upon reception of the confirmation message, the outstation removes events reported from its buffer. In an unsolicited sequence, the outstation sends an event message to the master spontaneously, that is, when it wants to without being asked. This unsolicited message looks almost exactly the same as a solicited message, with the only differences being 1. The application layer function code is unsolicited response, which is decimal 130, instead of response, which is 129. The application control octet has the unsolicited bit set, which is hex 10, as shown, and the sequence number is one more than in the last unsolicited response. There are two sets of sequence numbers maintained for coordination between the master and outstation. One for solicited messages with the UNS bit not set, and one for unsolicited messages with the UNS bit set. Like for events received in a solicited response, the master processes the events sends an application confirmation to the outstation. This confirmation has the UNS bit set along with the sequence number sent from the outstation. There are some rules for enabling outstation unsolicited reporting on startup. Unsolicited reporting is not always desirable. For example, when running over multi-drop serial lines, considerations must be given to the possibility of line collision. A line collision occurs when two outstations decide at the same time to send events. In this case, neither message would likely be recognized by the master, and both must eventually be resent. Unsolicited reporting does not work well if the possibility of line collisions is high. The decision on whether or not to use unsolicited reporting is controlled by the master. based on policies of the system managers. That is, the outstation does not send unsolicited messages until the master says it is okay. However, there is one exception. An outstation must send one message at startup to tell the master it is capable of unsolicited reporting. When an outstation that is capable of unsolicited reporting first powers on, it sends an unsolicited null response to the master. This is a message with an application header and internal indication flags, but no object data. Since the outstation has just restarted, the restart flag is set in the internal indications area. The application header has the UNS flag set and requires confirmation. The master notices this special message and realizes that an unsolicited capable outstation has restarted. It confirms the message. On reception of the confirmation, the outstation disables unsolicited reporting. The outstation did its part by making sure the master knew what it was capable of. It is the master's responsibility to enable this capability if it wants to use unsolicited reporting. If an outstation does not receive and confirm, it eventually resends the unsolicited null. It does so forever until confirmed. If it does not get a response after several tries, it may decide to wait longer to send subsequent messages, but it never stops altogether. Logic on when to send the second, third, or future attempts are beyond the scope of this class. An outstation that is configured to not use unsolicited reporting does not send the unsolicited null. Outstations that are able to be configured to support unsolicited reporting must be configurable to not do so, so that the unsolicited null is not sent. At this point, we have an unsolicited capable outstation that has started, sent the null unsolicited message, received a confirmation, and disabled unsolicited reporting. What now? To finish the startup sequence, the master sends a command to clear the restart internal indication flag to the outstation, reads events and static data for all input points, does some other stuff if it feels like it, and finally, after all this is done, and if it wants to use unsolicited reporting, sends a request to the outstation to enable unsolicited reporting. Now and only now is the outstation free to send unsolicited events. If unsolicited reporting is enabled, the master no longer has to poll for events. They will be sent as they occur. It may periodically poll for class 1230 data to refresh its database as a sanity check that, indeed, everything has been reported. If the master does not want the outstation to send unsolicited events, it never sends the enable unsolicited message. If the master restarts, that is, not the outstation, it performs the startup sequence shown above with one exception. As the first step, it sends a disable unsolicited message to the outstation. This puts the outstation in effectively the same state as if it had just restarted and had the initial unsolicited message confirmed. Unsolicited reporting, as described, should appear to be simple. It is just an alternate way of sending data. But there are a few possible complications. Consider the following. 1. Even though events may be reported unsolicited, the master may still, from time to time, issue a solicited poll. What happens if an outstation's unsolicited message is transmitted just when the master sends a request for the same events that were sent? The outstation cannot send the same events again. They might be misinterpreted as having occurred twice. And 2, what if the outstation sends an unsolicited message and, while waiting for the confirmation, the master sends a control request? Perhaps the control should be processed immediately without waiting for the unsolicited message to be confirmed. This may confuse the master outstation communication sequence about what should be done first. And 3, what if the outstation sends an unsolicited message and the requested confirm does not arrive? Should it send a message again? And if so, when? And what if new events occur during the interval that we're waiting? Well, for this class, the answer to all these questions is trivial. This class does not cover programming a device, only understanding the messages. So, since the message structure has already been discussed, we are not going to delve into all the idiosyncrasies that are implied by these questions. That is a subject for another class. So that ends the class on unsolicited reporting. Not so hard, huh? What did we learn? Unsolicited reporting is an alternate way for the outstation to report events, the other way being a solicited request-response sequence. Static data cannot be included in an unsolicited response. An outstation may, but does not have to, be able to support unsolicited reporting. Unsolicited enabled outstations send a null unsolicited message at startup. When confirmed, they disable unsolicited reporting until and unless re-enabled by the master. A master that wants an outstation to use its unsolicited reporting capabilities must send a message to explicitly enable this feature. And coordination issues may exist when a master sends a solicited message at the same time that an outstation sends an unsolicited response. We have not discussed how to handle these.